on you. Look how they shine. Look how they shine for you.
Right. I've had a whip around, I've talked to management, and allegedly they can turn up the thermostat. They may need some more base load power by the sounds of things to do that, but I'm doing my very best, I promise. I do promise you on that one. Interesting morning tea, team, wasn't it? No, it was almost a slender morning tea, really, this morning. I was expecting my pies and sauce, but I have it on good authority. They will be on the menu, so keep your eyes out for that one. I am, of course, just talking slightly aimlessly while I wait for everyone to come in the door. Jeffrey's here. Good on you, Jeffrey. That is fantastic. So I think most of the main crowd is in, and that's good because we've got a really good 2 sessions ahead of us. We're going to focus obviously on uranium, and I mentioned at the start of the day that when I opened up my resources pages, it was talk on uranium. All the media outlets are covering it at the moment. It's that one commodity really where we don't use kilos, or in the West we don't use kilos. The Russians may go the other way, or the Russians do, but we use imperial. So I noted that for the first time in 15 years, we've gone past the US $80 mark a pound, which is pretty impressive. And that stands well for all of our presenters in the next few sessions and us as potential investors. And leading our lineup, we have Uranium Royalty. I don't really think that this man needs a lot of introduction. John Borshoff. John Borshoff. He is arguably Australia's most experienced uranium executive, more than 40 years in the industry. He's the man that actually founded Paladin Energy, which he took from a junior explorer. And your peak, I think, John, 5 billion? Just a paltry 5 billion. So he's got his fingers in pies everywhere. And he was the developer of one of the first 2 conventional uranium mines built in the world for 20 years. So he's now recognised as a global uranium industry expert, and he's addressing us here today. I'm sure it will be educational, but he also has the investment potential for his company, which is Deep Yellow, which he became part of in 2016. So close the doors at the back, let's settle in and hear what he has to say. Would you please make John very welcome, everyone?
Thanks very much for that kind introduction, and I'm really pleased to be here. I haven't been in a RIU conference, and with Stuart and Jackson and Doug. I'm glad they've dragged me here. I think it's really important that we really promote uranium to the full extent possible, for reasons you'll hear on all the presenters giving their rendition of where nuclear is going. So I just want to start that, as mentioned, when I founded Paladin, my sort of main preoccupation in those early bad years, and there was bad years even then, was to establish a formidable pipeline of projects that had real potential to be developed. And it was really this preparation and positioning that allowed Paladin to become the investment phenomenon that it became. And when China announced that aggressive nuclear growth program, virtually out of the blue in early 2000, Paladin was primed and ready to take advantages that this positioning allowed. So I adopted a dual strategy for growth for Deep Yellow 6 years ago when I joined the company, and this was to grow a company both organically via discovery of deposits within the projects we had at the time, and inorganically via sector consolidation, and all done during a period of extended downturn. And this has not only been very successful, but as with Paladin, this has positioned Deep Yellow exactly where it needs to be to benefit from the very strong nuclear outlook that is emerging. It all feels a bit like deja vu to me about positioning a company to where it should be at the right time, and as I say, that has put us in a good place. The big difference today is we're even better prepared for reasons that I'll explain. And I think this is the positioning that differentiates Deep Yellow, as we're perfectly placed, which is our X factor. We have a great pipeline of projects, geographic diversification, and big production capability. We're now able to progress with firstly the development of the Tumas project in Namibia, and which will be followed closely by our recently acquired Mulga Rock project in Western Australia. These assets are backed up by a unique team with proven credential, and is a standout in terms of breadth and depth. And in all, Deep Yellow has a superb combination of projects, team, and opportunity that can now benefit even further from this incredible nuclear resurgence that we're experiencing. So before I go on in more detail, I'll alert you to the disclaimer. Please familiarise yourself, don't listen to everything I say, and get independent advice should you want to invest. You'll hear a lot about the fabulous outlook for uranium today from other presenters. And for this reason, I'll only give you a short version of what I think are the key elements driving this nuclear resurgence, and that is returning with such force. With this backdrop, I hope you will get a better appreciation throughout the afternoon of the benefits that are arising and the real value in working to a goal in bad times. We must recognise also that for the last 12 years since Fukushima, this industry has been tortured as a sector. It's been forced for underperforming, and it's created certain issues that the industry has to get up to speed with. I have 5 slides coming through, and as I say, I'll just quickly go through them. It's just why nuclear is essential, the demand from 23 to 2060, global acceptance with countries for more nuclear. That's only happened really in the last 9 months as a real, and it's going to continue. The uranium supply challenges, and then the nuclear fuel cycle challenges. So unashamedly, nuclear is a clear winner. And you can read all you like. It's just something that's never happened on such a scale since the oil shock days, when there was only one country or so that had nuclear, and coming out of the sort of nuclear armament programs, and 32 countries came in from a top-down decision to take on nuclear. It is the only option that is there for baseload power, not only power supply, but also to be applied to 3 or 4 other very important applications that renewables can't do. Heating, desalination, hydrogen, you name it, you throw it at it and nuclear will do it. Because people forget as well that nuclear produces not only sort of electrical power, but a huge amount of thermal power that can be applied. So renewables are also showing where they should be, which is in a corner, contributing importantly, but they should leave the main heavy lifting to nuclear because of what it can do. And that's why so many countries are coming in. So lowest carbon footprint, lowest material requirement, lowest land usage, lowest cost per unit. Yes, don't believe that bloody CSRO crap that you're hearing. And there are people around now that are dissecting those models, and they are shown to be patently false in terms of how they steer the cost equation to favour renewables. Terrific safety record, and it meets ESG demands like no other. Just very quickly, you'll hear about it, I won't go into very much, but I really want you to look at the bar at the bottom. So on top of the significant reactors are being built, and even though China is really important, when you look at it as combined, the rest of the world is building as many reactors. So this is a global phenomenon. But on top of that, China is wanting to replicate the current global fleet by 2060, which will only get them to 18% nuclear from the 5.5% they have today. US is going for 300 gigawatts, mainly through SMRs, and increasing the performance of reactors, both in terms of reactor upgrades, restarts, extensions, are a huge plus that's coming out, and also a huge further challenge for supply because there's more reactors to feed. So why are these countries coming in? As I say, Sweden, what it's doing, it turns itself on its head from 100% renewables to 100% no fossil fuel, and they've now announced these incredible programs that they want up to 10 nuclear reactors, 2 to be started very shortly. Belgium, East European, Italy, for goodness sake. France, the return of Korea and Japan. It's every country saying this is it, and it's never ever happened since the Borshoff days. And a lot of these, the implications of the has not even been really estimated properly by analysts. And the poor old utilities are sitting there wondering what's going on. And they think they can go and proceed without substantial increase in uranium prices. So the supply then is under pressure. Nobody's going to build a uranium mine now less than $75. So the incentivization for green field projects is not there yet. What is it going to be? 90, 100? Let's see what happens. Let's see when the utilities get off their asses and say, look, I know what it was like in the good old days, throw away the rear vision mirrors and look forward how they're going to get greenfield projects on this planet, because that's how only way we're going to meet this incredible growth in the nuclear fleet. So, and that we have to overcome with this long period of stagnation where not many, even the Cameco's and the Kazatomprom in these years, they've been essentially producers, not builders. So everybody has to come to grips with the decisions that have to be made, hard decisions, not comfortable decisions, to get new projects on the ground. A very exciting time. So that's where it is. The bookends here are yellow cake at the front, and the reactors at sort of toward the back. And it's the focus is on there. Yes, we've got the enrichment, sort of the fuel cycle there, but the primary way in which we're going to get there is not only that can we build that many reactors in the period, but how, to get enough product. And I'll tell you, there are huge positive opportunities there that we have to, the inventory's gone, and we've got pricing pressure is going to be there. $81, you can say what you want on price, but you shouldn't be surprised. $100, and I'm saying just it's a demand supply dynamic. And it's not us, me saying what it is or here, it's the market would make that call to incentivise production over a long period of time. So we've got a great future, and I don't think this is repeated in a long while, even not in the oil shock days. So very quickly then, I've only got 2 minutes. Anyway, so Deep Yellow, there we are, it's positioned. We've got a great spread of projects in Namibia, in Western Australia, the Alligator, which is a great project for the future, and a hard rock in north of our Tumas, but 400 million pounds on the register, and the company is, like most now, reacting positively from the realisation of prices that are coming through, but also in our case from the consolidation and getting 2 flagship projects together. Tumas is in Namibia. It's close by to Swakopmund. It's a great country. You see there, Langer Heinrich is 30 kilometres away, and it's got infrastructure. You'll hear Brandon talk about that, so I'll leave that for him, and what a great place it is to operate. Basically, the project is a de-risked Langer Heinrich. We've turbocharged Tumas with things we learned from Langer, and there will be benefits flowing on from that. That's the program there, 23 we're in. We're optimising the DFS. We'll make some announcements on that in December. We're going into detailed engineering starting early next year, and going into project financing, construction and production in 2026. Good numbers. We've shifted from 65 to 77, and all the parameters are really good. Mulga Rock. What we inherited from Vimy to what we are developing as a project is 2 different things. It's a larger project. It's more uranium we're going to extract, and also some rare earths and battery minerals as an aside. And there we're proving up that we can leach those, so that's all terrific. Yes, so there's an opportunity to develop Mulga Rock from a 15-year to 25-year project, and it's going to be a real sort of stalwart of, for uranium in Western Australia. And then the Western projects of Emperor and Shogun will then add on to that beyond that 25 years of just the Mulga Rock Ambassador and Princess projects. Alligator, I'll just say, we're looking not for a 30 million Narbalek type deposit. We are looking for 100 million to 200 million deposit. There are 750 million pounds found in the Alligator over a very short period of time, and it still beats the Athabasca. This is real hairy country. And so you've got to model your exploration to the target that you're seeking, and we're going to give ourselves 3 to 5 years there. There's our production profile. Tumas in year 2 being 2026, going for a sort of 7 million target. We're progressing those. They're tying it nicely with each other, and this is the positioning that I'm talking about. A really good work stream, great announcements late this year, early next year, and all to do mostly with Tumas and Mulga Rock. Just quickly, we've established the right platform at the right time. The market backdrop is exceptional for not only Paladin, but all the companies that are here this afternoon. Got a good team and board, and we want to become a major producer going into the future. Thank you very much.
Well done, John. You did that with 15 seconds to spare. How's that? Pretty good. And don't let this gruff exterior turn you off or to scare you away from having a chat with him later on either. He gets very passionate, very happy about uranium. Would you like me to escort you from the stage? There we go. That's okay, anytime. I have actually fallen off this stage once before, so don't rely on me for too much, but I do try my best. All right, let us go and talk now with that really good basis behind us now and a bit more education about what's happening in the sector. Aurora Energy Metals is joining us next. They're focused on the exploration and development of their 100% owned flagship project, which is in Oregon in the USA. Now, that project contains the largest mineable measurable resource in the US. So this is their managing director, Greg Cochran. He is a highly experienced international mining executive. He's got over 35 years worth of experience. And if he's looking a little bit tired, it's because he's just returned from the US, where he actually attended the International Uranium Conference. And I'm told that we're giving you all drinks this evening. Maybe we should lift our game next time and try and push the boat out, because you attended a very special evening, didn't you? What did you guys do for your social night?
Yeah, the social evening for the conference in Charlotte was actually a great evening at the NASCAR Hall of Fame. Being a bit of a petrol head, fantastic evening.
Yeah, very nice. Sorry, we can't offer you that, but we can offer you a nice fire engine later on this evening. Would you please make Greg welcome to talk about Aurora's project? Thanks, Greg.
Thanks for that introduction, Chrissy, and good morning to everybody. Thanks for sitting in and listening to our presentation. Great, as always, to follow up after John with his fantastic perspective on nuclear and the industry over many, many decades. I still remember fondly the first time I met John in Darba 2006, when I was head of corporate development for Mitsubishi Development, and we were looking at getting into uranium. I think what John didn't realize at the time is I did have a little bit of insight into Heinrich, because Langer Heinrich was drilled out by one of the South African companies that I worked for as a young mining engineer, and I actually met the geologist who drilled it out. I'd never heard of Langer Heinrich, and it had just been sold to Acclaim, who John bought the deposit off Acclaim. And this fellow Joe Hartlib was very nonplussed by the fact that Jane Call and Billiton had the audacity to sell Langer Heinrich. I'd never heard the word before, and I said, Joe, what's the buzz? And I never forgot his words. He said, Greg, mark my words, nuclear's time will come, and Langer will be one of the first of the new generation uranium mines to be developed. And John delivered on that promise. So fantastic history there. Bring it closer to home to us, Aurora, draw your attention to the usual disclaimer. Then I'm going to take a slightly different path to what I've historically done with my presentations, is I've kind of like taken a step back, thinking about, okay, why would anybody be interested in uranium? And clearly John's covered some of of my topic there, but I might bring a slightly different perspective. And then specifically US uranium, given that that's where our project is located. And then finally, I'll hone in on exactly the asset itself and what we're up to and why we think it is a compelling investment opportunity. So I guess you could summarize, apart from what John said, I think about in 3 or 4 different ways in terms of the uranium market. So we've got price and what we've seen just in the last few years, and in particular this year, energy security issues globally, the path towards net zero, which John obviously covered, and then finally thinking about price and inventory depletion, what impact that is having on price and on the aspiring producers. So start off with spot. It's up something like 67% this year alone. I can't recall many other commodities going up that much. I guess you could think about lithium earlier this year, but of course, as quickly as it went up, it tanked again and went dramatically down. So that's the other thing. The other thing is there's a 34% shortfall for this year's supply alone, and that's only going to get worse. So that's really interesting. You say, okay, well, how do we keep the lights on as far as a nuclear power station is concerned when your supply is under threat? And the offset to that is contracting volumes are currently at 10-year highs. And that sends a very clear signal that the utilities are no longer prepared to just rely on spot supply. The second point I mentioned was energy security. So nuclear and uranium is effectively a bifurcated market. You can see the sources of uranium supply and where they located, the big blue bubbles, and the greater sources of demand, the big yellow bubbles. And you can see there's a clear differentiation between the two. And that brings its own inherent challenges, in particular over the last 2 years with Russia's illegal invasion of the Ukraine. So that sensitivity around energy security has been hammered home in a most obscene fashion with that war. The people realize we've got to look after ourselves in your hemisphere, be it north, south, east, or west. The next one is towards net zero, and John mentioned this in some detail. I'd recommend trying to catch the movie by Oliver Stone, Nuclear Now, to get some really good sense of perspective on the history of how we got to where we are today and why nuclear became, coin a phrase, I guess, disenfranchised over the years, but now very much back on the scene. John's addressed some of those points there, and it really is important. He spoke about heating just briefly. Don't misunderstand what he's saying. That's not keeping your home warm at night, although people in Germany did die in Christmas last year because they could not afford their energy bills because they turned off perfectly good nuclear power stations. What he's talking about is industrial heating. And the very well-regarded environmental scientist from Fraser-Nash, Ben Hurd, said last week at the Uranium Conference, if you think that electricity decarbonization is difficult, we haven't even started on the major challenge, which is industrial heating. Germany, having spent 500 billion euros on trying to transition, would need to spend 3 times that amount to try and address their heating industrial requirements because they have very large chemical industries. Right, inventory depletion. I did a bit of marine economics as a young man, and so I try to think of, has the uranium market ever been driven by rational economics? And the answer is no. And it's always been driven by other issues up until recently. Now, all of a sudden, we are on a path where, yes, this has been driven by rational economics, where there needs to be a sufficient price attached to the commodity to elicit additional supply. And we're getting close, 75 for some. I think most of us would be looking at something well north of $80 a pound. Right, so US uranium, let's move closer to, I guess, where we're operating. So first of all, the US is the world's largest, or has the world's largest nuclear fleet, and is by definition, therefore, the world's largest uranium consumer. And it's remained fairly stagnant, despite the fact that they've shut down nuclear power stations over the years, but it's largely been 40 to 45 million pounds for the last 40 odd years. But they have no domestic production. Not only do they have no domestic production, but also when you interrogate where the uranium comes from, 2021 it was over 50% from former CIS countries, Russian included, and last year it was just below 50%, I think 48%. So here's this weird situation where they're reliant on, and the Kazakhs and the Uzbeks are clearly not our enemies, but the fact that their product goes through Russia creates all sorts of issues at a moral level and at a strategic level, and that needs to be addressed. Then domestic production is also barely there. This year we may see a few 100,000 pounds, and we'll be hearing from Wayne Heili a little bit later from Peninsula today. You might, if you know the story, seen the challenges he's faced to get his really compelling ISR operation up and running. So here we are in this dramatic inventory depletion phase, really emphasized by the situation in the US. So what the US has done is they've recognized this opportunity that there is the path to net zero is definitely reinforcing and reestablishing their nuclear business and building on their existing fleet. So they've got huge commitments, large programs in place to keep the lights on with the existing nuclear, thought that was me for it, with the existing nuclear power plants, but also new build, small modular reactor developments. Yes, we saw some bad news coming out of NuScale last week, or 2 weeks ago, which is in Portland. That's the same as the 2 very large wind turbine projects that also did not go ahead for similar reasons in the US. So before politicians get ahead of themselves and say, the SMRs are just a pipe dream, nonsense. There's hundreds of different developments ongoing in SMRs. And as I say, there's other challenges in going clean and green, not just nuclear versus renewables. The other point I'd like to emphasize is that in the US, apart from bipartisan support, which is the first in many, many decades, if not ever, is that it got huge levels, the highest ever levels of public support. And in fact, funnily enough, that is kind of reflected all over the world. You may be surprised to hear that, yes, in Germany and in Australia as well, there is more public support for nuclear than what the politicians would have us believe. And there are certain implications of that as we look forward into the future and how we decarbonize and how we provide for our energy security. So right, on to Aurora ourselves. First of all, it's great to start with scale. And, you start with something big, makes your life easier. So we have, and I did choose my words carefully and with Chrissy's introduction, the largest mineable measured and indicated uranium deposit. Why I can say that is because Coles Hill, which is the largest, is in Virginia. They've had a 40-year moratorium on uranium mining. They have nuclear power. They have coal mining, I know, because I visited those coal mines as a young man back in the 90s. But yeah, no go when it comes to uranium mining. It's a bit more difficult to unwind that compared to, say, unwinding this silly little issue we have in WA about mining uranium. So, greater chance of delivering your mine in WA or permitting WA rather than in Virginia. So there we are. So we've got the large resource, but it's not always just about scale. Obviously, quality comes into it as well. And we look to a smaller part of the resource, which is particularly high grade and shallow for that style of mineralization and that style of deposit. So there we are in Southeast Oregon. We also benefit from really good infrastructure. Why do we have that infrastructure? Well, it was a historical mining district for some 70 years. It came to an end about the early 1990s. So we benefit from that infrastructure. I mentioned the high-grade core sitting right at surface, so easy to mine. Also, because that infrastructure, part of the infrastructure is hydroelectricity, so clean, green, cost-effective, reliable, and cheap electricity. The other thing that we believe we can do is we can beneficiate the ore, and that would give us about a 70% mass pull, so 30% reject of the low-grade material with 90% recovery of the uranium. And that enhances your economics because it drives down your processing costs. So that's a big win, and most of us aspire to do that. I know certainly the TUMIS flow sheet includes a really good, well-designed beneficiation step with lots of evidence that it works back from the Langer-Heinrich days. We also have what we call this pathway to development, a very clearly defined pathway to development, and that's to take full advantage of different permitting regimes in the two different states, Nevada and Oregon, but also more importantly, to take advantage of that infrastructure that I mentioned. So we bought 410 acres, US speak, Imperial once again, Chrissy, 410 acres in the US on the border, 8 Ks as the crow flies from the deposit, and the substation with the hydroelectric power line is right there on the corner of that. It's flat. It's a sealed road that comes from the small town of McDermott close by, and the US 95 major highway passes through that town. So accessibility for reagents, if everything is certainly there. So that object or that objective of ours of taking advantage of the infrastructure certainly is a win. As a throwaway comment, we also have lithium in the overlying sediments. That's not well, we've also got lithium, look at us. It's kind of, yes, we've got the lithium, but the focus is the uranium, and we've recently done a transaction where we've basically given an option to another Aussie junior to pursue our lithium so that we can focus on the uranium. Rightio. Briefly as I'm closing, so here we have the corporate snapshot, in case you were waiting and wondering whether I was going to list it and mention it at all. There's the Mugs Gallery with the 3 board members and our company secretary. All of us very experienced, both in terms of US, uranium, and corporate as well. So good depth of experience within the organization, good balance on the share register of the original project development group that acquired the project, as well as some of the major, three in fact, of the major uranium-focused investment funds in the world are on our register and are very supportive. That being said, with that particular share price and that kind of low valuation, leads me to my concluding slide that, you know, there's plenty of upside in this particular project and in the company from the jurisdiction, the infrastructure, the fundamental quality of the asset, and the people driving it as well. And the closing mark goes to that as well. So think about this, because this is what we need to turn around in terms of the world's perspective on where you get your energy from. Aurora and our colleagues in the industry throughout the world can deliver via the uranium the clean, sustainable future that we deserve. Thank you very much for your attention.
Well done. It's becoming a more and more convincing argument, isn't it? We'll be all leaving this room here thinking there is only one possible way of providing these power sources. Bruce Lane is going to come up and join us in a moment. He's Executive Director and CEO at GTI Energy, and his earliest involvement with the uranium exploration dates back, I think it's 2010, wasn't it, Bruce, when you got started with them? He's got a massive ongoing passion for all the reasons that we've just heard from John and our second presenter as well. And he truly believes that with or without the howling tailwinds of climate catastrophe, this is going to be driven a lot quicker than what we think it's going to be. So their projects are in the US. As we've just heard, US is the home to the world's largest nuclear power fleet. They buy about a quarter of their annual global uranium production, almost entirely from offshore. And again, this is something he's passionate about, and it's something that he really wants to change. I'm going to just throw straight across to him, and he's got an interesting video that he wants to play for you first. So everyone just buckle up, because we're going to cowboy country.
That's a hell of a boring video without the sound, but anyway, thanks for watching that. So the good thing about following John and Greg is they've told you most of the background story, and I probably don't need to dwell on a lot of that, so I'll kind of skip through as much of it as I can. So we've got two major bits of activity going on at the moment. One is we're drilling at our Lohuma project in Wyoming, our ISR project, and we've also just conducted some geophysics, which I'll talk about. Get it going the right way, we'll be in business. Disclaimer, not providing investment advice, do your own research, and there will be some forward-looking statements. Price, probably don't need to talk about that. Spot price is obviously interesting, but we're all looking towards long-term contracting price, and we think that's all moving in the right direction at the moment. Greg talked a bit about the US. Clearly the US used to be a big supplier, and I'll talk a bit about that in a minute, of its own uranium, and that has changed dramatically. And there's quite a concern about that, ongoing concern about that, particularly when the US has decided to go to COP28 with an agenda to go from 100 gigawatts annually to 300 gigawatts of nuclear power. So the uranium supply side of that, the fuel supply side of that, is obviously a significant challenge for them that they need to address. And I think that picture probably tells the story. So this is a very interesting and busy chart, but what I'll draw your attention to is the US used to supply around 40 million pounds of uranium a year until the industry was basically slaughtered by the megatons to megawatts program, which was the reprocessing of weapons from Russia with the Soviet bloc. And so nuclear power providers were basically able to buy pounds for dirt cheap for a long, long time. And you see here what's happened is the industry died, and then we saw the rise of Kazakhstan. And so those are quite significant features. And the uranium production and supply business in the US, was let go essentially, to the point where Uranium One was sold to Rosatom, the Russian state-owned Russian company, and all of a sudden now the US is held captive to a certain extent by those Soviet bloc countries. So that's what we think needs to change. It wasn't obviously my idea. The US Department of Commerce wrote a very clear report about it back in 2019, and since then we've been on a steady kind of path to that changing. So what we're finding is in the US, the first responders, if you like, to the domestic production demand is coming out of the in situ producers in Wyoming. So Aura Energy are producing out of Lost Creek at the moment. That's about 15 miles away from one of our projects in the Great Divide Basin. UEC are talking about the possibility of a start maybe in the middle of next year at their operations in Wyoming. And then Energy Fuels aren't saying too much that's specific, but I would suggest that if UEC kicks back into gear, that Energy Fuels won't be too far behind them. And then we know that Peninsula's Lance is sort of scheduled to restart next year. So these are all companies that are within about 100 miles of where we are. Obviously, they're a lot more advanced than us, and they are getting back into production, but it certainly augurs well for what we're trying to achieve. So just for information, this is a picture of Rossing in Namibia, big open cut mine, and this is the largest in situ recovery mining operation in the USA at Cameco Smith Ranch Highland. So that's about 5.5 million pounds license capacity, and I think that's something similar. Don't quote me on exactly what it is, but there are some significant benefits to in situ recovery as a methodology. It isn't necessarily the lowest cost on the planet. I think if you've got massive grade, like you do in some of the Athabasca projects, your all-in sustaining costs can be obviously very low, but these are projects that don't demand usually a huge amount of capital, and so smaller resources can get back into production or be brought into production potentially sooner. So just to locate where we are, there's Cameco Smith Ranch Highland, which I just showed you a photo of, and our Lohuma project, which is our lead project, is about 10 miles away. And then down here in the Great Divide Basin, there's our Green Mountain and Great Divide projects, and they're just next to Aura Energy's Lost Creek. And so that proximity tells us that we're in a region that can build plants and produce uranium, and we're in a location in Wyoming that is very supportive. They've been producing in Wyoming since the 70s and 80s using ISR. So we think it's a favourable place to be, and certainly that's been our experience so far. Look, in terms of just our resources to date, at the start of the year we didn't have any JORC resources. We came out with a resource on our Green Mountain projects in the early part of the year, and then in June we published our resource at Lohuma that you see there, 5.71 million pounds at 630 ppm. So it's a good start. We were able to do that because we had a body of historical information that we were able to bring into JORC very quickly. And so what we're doing at the moment is doing some drilling to verify that and to try and upgrade it and obviously extend it. But what we're left with Lohuma is an additional potential for sort of 5 or 6 to 10 million pounds. And just to give you a context of whether that's meaningful, Aura Energy's Shirley Basin project, which is about 30 miles away from their Lost Creek project, they've made a decision to bring that on, and that's an 8.8 million pound project. So these projects don't need to be massive. The capex is quite modest compared to a lot of projects that get developed. So just to talk a little bit about our Lohuma project, As I said, close to Cameco Smith Ranch Highland, decent bit of ground. We have this significant historical database which has allowed us to develop a pretty good understanding of the resource. And so what we're doing at the moment is out there drilling at the moment. It's a small program, 26 holes, 4,500 feet, with the objective of verifying the resource and upgrading, and hopefully we can bring a fair amount of that into indicated. But obviously we need to do the drilling to be able to determine that. There is exploration potential along the trends and at depth, and we did a bit of geophysics just to check to see whether it agreed with our hypothesis. And what we see here is obviously these good signatures, which is what you'd expect of radiometrics near the surface. We've got some historical information that tells us that these areas where the radiometrics are less or lighter, there is actually where the mineralisation is going under cover, under more cover. And what's significant about that is that Cameco produces out of the formation below us 10 miles away. So we're in the Wasatch Formation, which is productive in the basin, and then Cameco's producing out of the Fort Union. So we've got both of those formations on the ground position, and what we're doing with the exploration is going along trend in the Wasatch, but also into the depths, into the Fort Union. So we're pretty hopeful we'll find something good there. So I want to talk very briefly about our Green Mountain project before I sign off. We're in a pretty good neighbourhood. It's a reasonably big piece of dirt. We've got Rio's projects up here, Energy Fuels here, UEC are all around us, and we're still only a matter of 15, 20 miles away from our our Great Divide projects and Aura Energy. So we know there's uranium mineralisation there. We've got historical data from drilling in the 70s from Coomagee. We've got some oil wells, and we have an exploration program already planned, but we decided, because it's quite a big bit of ground, a bit more geologically complicated, that we'd see if radiometrics could help us. And it has. So we've got and found an additional around 12 miles with close to 20 k's of additional trends in six anomalous areas. And that's obviously the superficial expression of the uranium. So we understand there is a mineralisation at depth there. So our objective here was to help us to target our drilling and to put together a drill program for the middle to the end of next year. So that's the summary of where what we're doing. Drilling at the moment, working on refining the drill targeting for Green Mountain. We'll have some drill results out hopefully before the end of the year. We'll see how that goes. And then drilling at Green Mountain for next year. So just a quick summary of the corporate share price. It sort of hovers between 0.8 and 1 cent. So our market cap hovers between 14 million and 20 million as a result. We had 2.7 million bucks in the bank at the end of the last quarter, so we've got sufficient funding to do what we need to at the moment. I'll draw your attention to a couple of people on the board. Jim Boffman, who's a local in Wyoming, who's exited one company which was High Plains Uranium to Uranium One in the past, and Doug Beam, who's been drilling for and developing Wyoming ISR projects and various other projects since the 70s. So we're in pretty good hands from an exploration point of view. Obviously, we are an exploration company. I look at the likes of John and Brandon and the other guys here who are developing projects, and clearly we're a lot earlier than that, but that's reflected in our market cap. So thank you very much for taking the time to listen, and please, I'm in the hall down there if anybody wants to come and chat about anything. Thank you.
Bruce, I like the way that you finished there with thank you everyone for taking the time to listen. So at the start, when I was so impressed by all of you, we started playing the video and you just sat there like very well behaved school children. But I'm pretty sure that there is sound on that video, isn't there?
There's definitely sound on that video. Unfortunately, we didn't get to hear it.
Well, if I spoke nicely to Shane, there we go. Take your seat. Let's see if we play it out for you. So what music did you play in your head when it was playing originally the first time? No. I actually had some words. I thought some words would be going as well, but that was pretty good. So my apologies, but it's good that we were able to resurrect that one up for us. I just got a message from our staff at the front, and they would like to know if you're all comfortable. No? Yep. Good. I will pass that back to her. I certainly feel a bit warmer, that is for sure. We are going to talk now about Aura. Now, Aura is a highly leveraged company. They've got a combined uranium resource of over 800 million pounds. They're production ready at the Mauritanian project at a time where, as I mentioned at the start, and we've now heard it on a number of occasions, we have that price of over $80 per pound for the first time in 15 years. Would you please welcome the MD of Aura, David Woodall.
Thank you. Again, I encourage you to read the disclaimer and we'll talk about a few forward-looking statements. So today I'm going to talk about what's changed, although I think John has probably given us a really good brief on what is happening in the industry. I'll talk about Aura Energy, what we're looking to do, how we're proposing to move forward, where we see the investment opportunity. One of the projects that are coming very close into production. I won't talk about the uranium market per se, other than to say that you've got a market that's being driven not only by the increase of electrical demand, but you've also got a market that is being impacted significantly by a lack of supply due to lack of investment for over a decade. I'll talk about the tourist project and give you a sense of what we're looking there, our Heili project in Sweden, and then I'll give some key takeaways. So as we talked about, the key change, the decarbonisation, we're looking at increase in energy demand. Listening to a podcast quite recently, there's some 2 billion people that have to cook with firewood. So there is a requirement for significant increases in energy. And that energy has to be secure, sustainable, and also affordable, and got to be baseload. So what do we have in Aura? You've got a market that's being driven, and we're seeing that as we speak today with the increase in spot price to over $80. And now you've got the shortfall last year, somewhere between 20 to 25 million pound shortfall. That's predicted to grow between 60 and 70 million this year. So there's certainly a crisis building going forward. With Tiris out of Mauritania, this is a low capital and operating cost project. We don't drill and blast. It's free digging. We don't crush and grind. Similar to what they do at Langer Heinrich and what John was talking about with Deep Yellow, we do beneficiation, and that gives us significant advantage because our head grade, our feed grade going to our leaching circuit is some 2,000 parts per million. We've got significant potential to grow the resource. We're moving forward to on a drilling program that's targeting 100 million pounds in the region, and this project can go for over 16 years and further at about 2 million pounds a year. In Heili, this is a tier 1 project. This is massive, over 2 billion tonnes. Our recent scoping study accounted for about 3% of it being extracted, got very strong economics. And with the change that is occurring globally, and especially in Sweden, with a clear statement of going to 100% fossil-free energy, an expectation between 8 to 10 reactors being built in the near term, the country is changing. So you look at Tiris, you've got 100 million tonnes, just under 60 million pounds, 16-year mine life. It's development ready. So we've got exploitation permits in place, we've got environmental permitting in place. We have, in the final process, I spent this week doing a final review on the capital and operating costs for our feed study, so that'll be released imminently. And an export permit is in the process. So under Mauritanian law, you get an exploitation permit. that entitles you to get an export permit, provided you can work and deliver the standards and protocols to move a Class 7 product through the country. That final document is now with the ARSN in Nouakchott, and we're expecting that is progressing well and expected. You can see these strong economics. Just as it's an open pit mine, the average depth of this mine is 4 meters, and the deepest part is 7 meters, and it's pretty basic mining. What we're focused on now, we've got an offtake agreement with a group out of the UK called Curzon. We are having lots of conversations, as is most near-term uranium producers, with utilities, both in North America and in Europe. So that's progressing. We're progressing discussions on financing, looking at sort of debt, hybrid debt financing, and potentially strategic investors. That's considering going forward. So that's all going well, and we're expecting things to continue moving forward. Our growth strategy with Hagon, we are progressing. We released the scoping study. That scoping study showed the strong economics of the project, and we're progressing to get an exploitation permit in place, being applied for in August of 24. We're pretty confident of targeting £100 million, and we see, as you grow the resource, and I'll talk about this more, is the scalability and optionality of the planned project we're looking for. Corporate snapshot, I'll just give you a sense of, there's Hagon, middle of Sweden, and Turris out in Mauritania, and just over, well, it's about 200 million as of today, 8.6 million in the bank, so we're well funded to do what we have to do. Said I won't talk about generally the market. So Turris, phase 1 capital, £800,000 a year, is about just under 90 million, and phase 2 is a further 90 million, which will get you to £2 million. All in sustaining costs as part of our EFS, just under $30 a pound, and I'm pretty confident when we get the feed study done, that's going to be around the 30s or in the low 30s, so that's going well. It's permitted, it's ready to go, and we've got significant opportunities to grow that resource, and that will continue. And here's the difference with Turris. So as you take a head grade of about 285 parts per million, you put it through a scrubber, that's you literally wash it. You take the fines anywhere from minus 150 microns or minus 75 microns, and that sees a head grade going from the 285 over to 2000. And that's what it is. So you're mining 4.5 million tonnes a year, you're treating 450,000 through your leaching circuit. So your mass through that process is significantly less. So that means your leaching circuit's smaller, your ion exchange, and so on and so forth. So that goes forward. So in our EFS stage, we build 4 of these beneficiation plants, which is basically a sizer, a scrubber, and filters, and from that then it's pumped anywhere between 6 to 15 kilometres back to a centralised leaching circuit. Over time we'll build 2 of those, and the back end's got a capacity of 3.5 million pounds, and that's where we see the exploration potential within the Turris area that will feed this. So for an additional $90 million, we can increase this to then produce a further up to 3.5 million pounds a year. And that's really the focus we're starting to move on. So you can see the economics. What are we doing this year? We're on target to get this feed study completed in the 4th quarter. We're progressing tracks and conversations with utilities. We're also progressing conversations on finance. Into 2024, then you'd go into a detailed engineering, your long lead items, your FID, and then construction preparation. Due to the modular nature of the project, construction from time of detailed engineering is about 18 months to complete your detail engineering construction. That would see you moving to commissioning late 25, early 26 and into production 26. So it's a very short timeline to get this project up and running. In terms of the opportunity in exploration, you can see in the dark blue where our resources are, and you can see this, this turquoise colour where we have got radiometric anomalies. And this is where we see significant opportunity to grow our resource beyond 100 million. And the drill is now mobilising from Cote d'Ivoire to Mauritania as we speak. Why are we confident? Well, if you look at the Hippolyte West area, you can see the drilling and where the resource is in the yellow. And you can see outside of that in the past where holes were drilled but weren't either sampled or completed. So we can see areas in here that we're pretty confident, and in all of our areas of interest, we are pretty confident we'll add some pretty low cost additional resources. So we're spending about 1.8, 1.9 million Australian, and we're targeting somewhere between 8 and 30 million pounds and beyond. So that's where we see ourselves going forward. It's all within what we know, stepping out beyond it, and we see significant opportunity to grow. In Hagon, Hagon is a tier 1 project. Those who've worked in Europe, there's a lot of progress in Europe for Europe to become more self-sufficient. Mining is not something that's been done very often. Say in Sweden, the last large mine that was built in Sweden is some 25 years ago, and yet it's got a significant history of mining, and they want security and security of domestic supply. You're seeing in the government early in the year passed or made a statement regarding its requirement to become 100% fossil free. Recently, the government introduced legislation to increase the amount of nuclear reactors in the country, somewhere between 8 or 10. So, and as other speakers have talked about, the momentum in Sweden is people in Sweden are actually pro-nuclear because they see after last winter that the prices went so high that people could not afford the heat and look after themselves. Part of the process in the Hagon project is vanadium, and vanadium, the redox flow batteries are a significant component. So in the world today, you've got about 100,000 tonnes of vanadium being consumed. 92% of that is consumed in steel. What's predicted between now and 2035 is there's going to be 300,000 to 400,000 tonnes of vanadium be consumed, and about 75% of that is going to be consumed within the energy storage batteries, which are essential if renewables are going to be able to meet some of the energy demand. In Hagon, you can see that's our tenement that we're progressing on exploitation. There's the area of influence in this scoping study, and you can see with just focusing on future-facing metals, excluding uranium, you've got 450 million to 1.3 billion. So a very strong project. You add the uranium with what we expect to be the change in the uranium ban. We expect that to occur in 2024 from all conversations we're having in the country, and you'll see that the economics are just further enhanced. What's driving the value? Driving the value, 47% of it is in vanadium. Because the alum shales have a lot of potassium, when you put the ore through the autoclave, it cracks the micas, releases the potassium into solution, and then we recover it as sulfate of potash. So 80% of our material comes from two products, being the vanadium and sulfate of potash, with certainly the uranium adding significant value as we go forward. So what do we have? We've got a clean energy demand that's growing. That's driving the uranium price. Our tourist project is certainly near term. This can be in production by 2026 and grow beyond its planned £2 million a year. And for a small company like Aura, having things like the ability to grow tourists effectively and efficiently, and also grow the Tier 1 Hagon project, puts us in a very strong position. Thank you.
Thank you very much, David Woodall. Would you thank David Woodall from Aura Energy again, everyone? Go on, give him a big clap. That's right. Or just not a thumbs up. All right, hairy one, get yourself up here, sir. Up you come. Now, when he comes up here, have a good look at the tie on this fellow here. I was looking at it. He bleeds a certain colour, this man. I went searching him up, I'd like to research all of our presenters, and this one here, I talked about Eddie Everywhere with David at the start. This one here is Eddie Everywhere when it comes to what footy club?
West Perth Football Club, the Mighty Cardinals.
So now, I was looking at you down there, I actually thought that you had some blue in that tie, but when you get up here, it's more of a burgundy with the red. So I was wrong, Richard Homsany. So that did not detract from the substance of your speech. So we're going to talk Toro Energy now. Richard's actually got a really extensive legal and executive management experience in the energy and resources industry. He was the Executive Vice President for Australia at TSX-listed Mega Uranium since 2010, and he's been Executive Chairman at Toro Energy Ltd since 2017. But your uranium experience, that goes all the way back to 1999. So you can have a beer with him afterwards and talk to him about that. He's a beloved footy team and, of course, Toro Energy. Would you please make him welcome, everyone?
Thank you for that introduction, Chris. Okay, they're the disclaimers. So that's a corporate profile of Toro. I've been involved with uranium in an executive or non-executive capacity since 2005. I also worked for the controlling shareholder of ERA from 1998 for a couple of years, so my experience with uranium goes back a long way. Richard Patricio is also on our board. He is on the board of NextGen Energy, which owns the largest undeveloped uranium deposit in the world, and he will soon become the chairman of ISO Energy as a result of a merger on the TSX and TSXV. And Michelle Murrier has been a long-time director of Toro, coming on board with the investment from Sentient. What is Toro? We have the Wiluna Uranium Project, which is comprised of 3 uranium deposits, Lakeway, Centipede, Millipede and Lake Maitland. We have 62.7 million pounds of U3O8 in that project. We also have a further 28 million pounds in 3 exploration projects in WA. We also have a significant vanadium inventory, which we can now extract as we've made a processing change to use ion exchange. This Wiluna uranium project, comprised of 3 deposits, was permitted at a state and federal level as recently as 2017. It is not a decades-old project that was permitted some time ago in history. It was relatively recent. We have done further work at Wiluna. We did a lot of research and development, and there was some processing breakthroughs. We decided to do a scoping study on Lake Maitland only, which is one of 3 deposits at Wiluna, and it disclosed a very strong NPV of 610 million, a low capex of 189 million US with a rapid 2.5-year payback, and a superb all-in sustaining cost of around $28 US for the life of mine. We also, on our uranium ground, have excellent nickel results. So we didn't go chasing projects. We were drilling our existing tenure, long held, and we've come up with some excellent discoveries of massive and semi-massive nickel sulfide, and there's plenty of upside there. I won't give you the investment thesis on uranium. That's been done by by the previous presenters here and done very well. It is a compelling case. We're at 15-year highs with uranium spot pricing, so that tells you we're in the right sector at the right time. So again, Wiluna. So let me go back. Let me go forward. So you've got Lakeway, Centipede, Millipede up there, and you've got Lake Maitland further down. Those are the deposits that make up Wiluna. Again, most of our resource is measured and indicated. It's a relatively shallow deposit. At its deepest, it's 15 metres, but most of the mineralisation is sub 10 metres. We're in a well-established mining area. We've got mining leases, and we've got a significant uranium inventory. So we undertook many years of research and development that bore fruition in the scoping study we released last year. Due to the science, we found that clay-dominant deposits like Lake Maitland would benefit the most. Its feasibility technically and financially would be radically changed with a change in processing flow sheets. So we focused only on the Lake Maitland project because it is the most clay-dominant. It also has the benefit of a joint venture with JORD, which is a syndicate of Japanese nuclear power companies, and Itochu, the well-known trading house. There's a 35% interest that those Japanese parties can acquire in Lake Maitland upon an investment decision by us. They will have to pay $40 million US approximately to buy a 35% interest. So with that in mind, we undertook a scoping study, and we go from in 2014 over 3 deposits having a mine life of 15 years. At Lake Maitland, Lake Maitland only, we go to 17.5 years. We also go from producing 14.4 million pounds at Lake Maitland within the 3 deposit scenario, the full Wiluna project, to on its own, because of these processing breakthroughs, we can produce 22.8 million pounds. So that uplift of 7.4 million pounds, if you multiply that by $80 US spot, that's an additional $900 million Australian in gross product value alone, which is a mind-blowing number. So we disclosed an NPV. Our base case is 609 million, 610 million NPV. However, in today's reality with the revised uranium price and the current exchange rate, scenario 2 of $676 million is more likely and more representative. And again, that's with the $70 U3O8 price. If we assume an $80 U3O8 price, there's an additional $350 million Australian in gross product value, not net present value, in gross product value, that we can add to that 676 NPV number. So again, these are the financial outcomes, which are excellent for Lake Maitland. It's a modest CapEx. We also have lower OpEx. Again, life of mine for Lake Maitland, it's an all-in sustaining cost of $28 US, which is an excellent number, a mine life of 17.5 years, average annual production of 1.3 million pounds, U3O8. And let me just go back. So the average EBITDA is about 100 million Aussie a year. So that's $2 million in EBITDA a week, right, on average. That Lake Maitland, one of 3 deposits, only one of 3 deposits without factoring any material in from Lakeway or Centipede, Millipede, that's what that project can make. Again, research and development was undertaken. We eliminated a couple of capital-intensive steps. We were able to have a lower pit cutoff at Lake Maitland so we could process more product. Because we can move to ion exchange now, we can liberate the vanadium. So basically, Lake Maitland produces 22.9 million pounds of U3O8 over its life and 11.9 million pounds of V2O5 red flake over its life. We've assumed a $70 U3O8 price and a modest $5.67 vanadium price, and a 70-cent Aussie US exchange rate. Again, in essence, because of this research and development work at scoping study level, and we're very, very confident it will stack up at pilot plant pre-feas level, which we intend to do next year for Lake Maitland. Instead of mining just the red bits, we can now mine the red and green bits in that Lake Maitland pit. So it's been a radical transformation, and those financial outcomes are realised in the numbers that I've just gone through. So with that reoptimisation, we can get US $560 million more revenue out of that one pit. Again, this is one deposit within the 3 deposits that make up Wiluna. So basically there was a re-evaluation of the geology. They looked at clay dominant materials where the resource is. That led to a beneficiation step, which is effectively desliming. Because you've deslimed the product, you've reduced, say, the volume of the product. So going from 1 tonne, you're now going to 250,000 kilos, and you're supersizing the grade by 3. Beneficiation is a physical process. So if you put this physical beneficiation circuit at the front of your hydromet circuit, you only have to put 1/4 of the material into your hydromet circuit. Because you can beneficiate, the material becomes porous, therefore you can add a filtration step to remove the salts, to remove the chlorides, which means 2 things. Salts is a major consumer of reagents, so we've eliminated a massive operating cost, or mitigated a very significant operating cost item. And it also means that there are no chlorides to compete in an ion exchange with the uranium, so you can use ion exchange. And the benefit of that is you can liberate very easily, you liberate it whether you like it or not, the vanadium. So vanadium becomes cream on the cake. Yes, it makes a difference to the economics, but it's more like cream on the cake. It's not absolutely vital that whether that revenue from the vanadium makes or breaks the project. So the beneficiation circuit is a fantastic step. It's just a novel application of already existing well-known techniques. The leach feed is a lot drier. The leach circuit is improved in efficiency. In fact, the leach tanks can now fit in most people's backyard sheds. The project becomes smaller, the environmental footprint becomes smaller, the power consumption becomes smaller, the reagent use becomes smaller, operating costs go down, capital costs come right down, and you've got an excellent project. So when we do the pilot next year, which will include hopefully not just Lake Maitland, but all from Lakeway and Centipede Millipede, we'll be able to show potential investors and the regulators, both state and federally, what an excellent project this is financially and technically. So again, we weren't in the uranium doldrums when we're dealing with a uranium price of $19 a pound or less. We drilled for other minerals on our tenure, long-held tenure that was only ever held for uranium, and we made a nickel discovery early. We went chasing gold and secondly nickel, but the nickel discovery prevailed at Dusty. So you can tell our geologist, Dr. Greg Shirtliff, whose great work led to these discoveries, is a Richmond supporter. Not the colours red and blue, Chris, but I'll trade that off for a nickel discovery any day with the yellow and black. So we've got Dusty, Hooly Dooly, Jumping Jack and Dimmer. And look at these results. You're getting 2% nickel over a few meters, massive or semi-massive. Jumping Jack, 3.45 meters at 1.42% nickel. So Rewalt's legacy might live on through Jumping Jack. Dimmer, which is probably our best nickel discovery to date, is largely on Lake Maitland. So Lake Maitland is just this fantastic potpourri of minerals. So we're very confident that with further drilling, and again, it's diamond drilling that we need to do, with further drilling, and so diamond is expensive to get below the paleo channel, this project will just get better and better. So it's just a function of time and money. We also have gold potential, but we put that to one side while we pursued our nickel ambitions and our continued uranium ambitions. Because Lake Maitland is one of 3 deposits, we have this optionality that we think not many other companies have, in that we've got 2 nearby deposits that we haven't factored in to a study yet, to show you what the economic returns from the broader Wiluna uranium project, what that would amount to. We know that they're not as clay dominant as Lake Maitland, but we believe that the processing redesign and the improvements that we've made there will apply with economic upside at those other 2 deposits. And we look forward to delivering on that as the next steps for us at Toro. So we are currently doing an extension study of Lake Maitland with SRK to see if there is any high-grade material that we could bring down to a Lake Maitland uranium vanadium processing operation. That study is ongoing. It might mean that we have to put another beneficiation plant at Lake Way, centipede, millipede, and truck the beneficiated ore down to a Lake Maitland processing plant. Hydromet circuits plant, but that's being evaluated as we speak. Of course, we will do the pilot. We also have 28 million pounds outside of Wiluna. So the question is government policy. Are you going to continue to penalise Toro for the current WA government policy settings? Can these current government policy settings in WA continue for much longer while uranium surges to 80 and probably will break through 100, we'll probably break through 120, we'll probably break through 150, and we'll have billions and billions and billions of dollars sitting in the ground? Will those current WA government policies continue with those returns there to be enjoyed? Thank you all for your attendance today.
Good on you, mate. You'll have to have a employment policy for next time, I would just say. I'm sure there's some good geologists who support the right team. Right. Jeffrey, shh, you can talk to him at his booth afterwards. No, Jeffrey, I'm running late. Now, our next speaker is a former lawyer who managed to find a way into an industry she's always had a passion and a fascination for, and she's been killing it, to put it bluntly, ever since. She was part of the team of Extract Resources during the last uranium cycle and played a major role in the sale of the company. They had a world-class deposit in Namibia, and you managed to sell it, you were part of the team that sold it to a Chinese-based entity, $2.2 billion. So she's done many, many things in the past decade or so that she managed to find herself in this field that she's passionate about. Right now, she is the CEO and Managing Director of Perth-based 92 Energy. Now, 92 Energy is a uranium explorer that's operating in Canada's world-class Athabasca Basin. And the company has unearthed the high-grade Gemini uranium discovery, and that's got tremendous growth potential because I'll let you fill everyone in on that, but it's a new zone mineralisation, and I know has your whole team talking. So would you please make Siobhan very welcome, everyone?
Hi, everyone. So thank you so much for having me. It's been a fascinating session, taking a spin around the world and looking at where all our potential supply is going to be coming from. And of course, as we know, uranium has just hit $80 a pound in the spot price. And really, this is something that John and myself have been discussing for a while, as a long time coming, because there has been such a tightness in the uranium market now for several years. That secondary supply that we've seen in the market, which has really been filling that gap in the supply and demand, is now all gone. And as we see, you know, the Chinese have been going on a buying rampage around the world. They obviously own 2 of the mines in Namibia. And they've also, you know, just gone and purchased up a huge amount of the Kazakh product. So, you know, it's a very tight market, and I see only very good things to come. The long-term contracting price is also moving up. But of course, just a bit about 92 Energy. We're a uranium explorer. We're in the Athabasca Basin in Canada. It is the highest grade uranium district globally. We have a brand new discovery. It's called the Gemini Uranium Discovery, and it's currently defined over 250 by 290 meters, which sounds small in the context of uranium in Namibia, but the grade comparison is truly staggering. So we have hit 10% uranium, which to compare with the Namibian grades is 100,000 ppm. So there is lots of potential for super high grade uranium in our discovery, but also, you know, the average grade across the discovery is 3 times the average grade globally that is mined in uranium. So an amazing prospect. We've got a well-defined zone already and tremendous upside potential at Gemini. So we're in the investor sweet spot. We've only got a market cap of $42 million, a high-grade uranium discovery with huge growth potential. In a strong uranium price outlook. We have an excellent land package in what I would consider, next to Namibia, the premier uranium mining jurisdiction in the world. It hosts the Cigar Lake and McArthur River mines. It's a great jurisdiction to be operating in. And of course, we had that early success with Gemini, which was discovered on our 4th drill hole ever as a company. So this was some excellent geology from our team, and you know, it really was a greenfields discovery. We tracked some radioactive boulders and the ice direction, and we also had some bog sediment sampling, actually around 500 ppm. So the grades you're looking at Namibia were in the bog around where the Gemini discovery was, and then we flew a VTEM and it had a thumping big anomaly over the Gemini discovery where we're currently drilling at the moment, or we've been working on for the last couple of years. So we're fully funded for our next drill program. This is a picture of the Athabasca Basin. There's a lot of companies operating in Canada in the Athabasca Basin. We started the trend of Australian companies listing on the ASX with Canada Athabasca Basin exploration, and of course, due to that success, there's been a couple more come into the market as well. As I said, some of these grades are 100 times higher than those found elsewhere. Cigar Lake is only 10 kilometres from our Tower project, and our Gemini project, which is where the discovery is only 26 kilometres from McArthur River mine. In fact, the trend going through Gemini goes all the way up through McArthur River. So it's a very exciting discovery. It's a brand new trend in the Athabasca Basin, and there's lots of potential upside to go. So just for you, for the people out there who haven't seen what 10% uranium looks like, if you take a look at the right-hand side of the slide here, you can see 37,000 on the spectrometer. This is 10% uranium, super high grade. Of course, we've been hitting some nice zones of plus 1% uranium throughout our drilling campaign, and it's very consistent, as I said, in that well-defined area that we're looking at. I'm not going to get too much into the uranium market, but it would be remiss of me not to talk about it for at least a couple of minutes. So 10 years lack of underinvestment. Husab is the last uranium mine to be built. And that was a mine that we sold during the last uranium cycle. It's now the second largest producer of uranium in the world, but really nothing has come into this market for a very long period of time. And the result is a massive supply shortfall looming in the market. We are currently producing less than the demand. And this, of course, is cumulative in the market as the years go on. We've had supply side issues. These, as we know, in the industry are quite common and really aren't factored into the supply and demand schedule put out by the WNA each year. So of course we've had that Niger coup, which has impacted the amount of uranium coming out of coming out of Niger into France, which is 20% of Europe's supply. And of course the reduction in Cameco's supply, which was announced before the WNA, Kazakhs have actually said that they're going to increase supply, but there's issues around logistics in Kazakhstan. So I would watch for potential supply issues going forward there. And of course, the long-term market for uranium between producers and utilities has resumed in earnest. So very exciting time to be in the market. I'm not going to talk about the demand drivers, but clearly the demand drivers are a desire to decarbonise and that energy security that we've been talking about. Small modular reactors are something that really are coming up all around the world, and I think there's going to be a real trend going forward. So watch this space. This is an excellent graph which really demonstrates how the contracting has dramatically accelerated this year. To date, we've had £160 million contracted in this year. It's the highest amount of uranium contracting in the market since Fukushima. And you can see that the contracting really begets the increase in the long-term price for uranium. So it's a very exciting time to be in this market. Just quickly about the GMZ and the mineralized zone that we've discovered, that 43 meters at 0.62% was the 8th best hole drilled globally last year in the uranium market. It's a pretty significant hole. It's a nice consistent ore body or mineralization, and we've had some nice chunky high grade intercepts within that. You can see those ppm grades if you compare those to the 500 ppms that you'll get in Namibia. You can just really see the grade upside there. And it does remain open. There is potential for additional zones. We just recently hit this structure on the eastern side of the GMZ. So you can see the well-defined mineralization in the red blob. But if you move over to the east, you can see that we're hitting mineralization at GEM 2375. It was an absolutely beautiful hole that we drilled there. It had uranium in it. It had copper in it up to 3.8%. So there's lots of other minerals moving through the system. It just shows the fertility of the system. The potential strike length along here is 600 meters. It's largely undrilled. Just to give you context, the footprint of some of these super high grade deposits in Canada are absolutely tiny. So there's potential to host several more zones along that structure there. So it's super exciting for us all. And we're really looking forward to drilling that coming up soon. And this really demonstrates this parallel structure, the geology of it. So on the left-hand side, you can see Rabbit Lake. This was a mine that was mined in Canada. You can see that there's two ore bodies sitting side by side within two parallel structures. And then if you go over to the right-hand side, you can see the GMZ defined area and the potential for those additional zones of mineralization. So there's actually 3 structures going through and lots of potential for additional zones within those structures. There's also a target for unconformity hosted mineralization, which is also super interesting because they host the mega high grades of uranium. So if you find uranium in that sandstone, those mega high grades of up to 20% can be present. And I show this because this makes most geologists in the room cry. It's super altered in this new parallel structure that we've drilled. It just goes on for 100 meters of alteration. It includes copper in the alteration, and you can really see that there. It's absolutely beautiful stuff to be drilling. It was very exciting to drill this hole. Unfortunately, it was the last drill hole of our drilling program, so we are really looking forward to getting out there and following up. And of course, that had some uranium mineralization with 0.2% uranium, which again is that 2000 ppm uranium. So we're going to hopefully vector into another decent size zone, which looks very similar to the GMZ. But wait, there's more. So in Gemini, it's the start of a brand new trend in the Athabasca. And as you might know, in the Athabasca, it's all about the trend. So basically the Arrow and the Triple R deposits, which you might have heard of, are all within the one trend. We have 15 kilometers of trend, which is completely unexplored. It's a brand new trend in the Athabasca Basin. So very exciting potential upside there. And you can see this in the geophysics that we've got. We've got lots of targets going up through that trend. And as I said, that trend goes all the way up to MacArthur River. So it's an exciting trend. And, you know, we're very much looking forward to getting out there and exploring some of those broader target areas and hopefully having additional discoveries along that trend. But not only that, we did some prospecting in the southern area of the Gemini this year. And of course, you know, as we do, we found some radioactive boulders. They returned 0.39% of U3O8. As I said, you know, tracking those uranium boulders is a very effective way of making further discoveries. So again, this goes to show the whole prospectivity of Gemini, which is an extremely large land package in the Athabasca Basin. I should say it's impossible, it's very difficult to get into the Athabasca Basin now. It's completely staked out. So to get into the Athabasca Basin and have this land package is very amazing. So our next steps, we're doing some more ground geophysics at Gemini. That will be up along that trend to the north as well. And we're obviously doing a desktop review of those results to formulate our next drill program. We'll be looking to get back out there as soon as we possibly can. And we're, as I said, very excited to do further drilling. We do have an additional 10 projects in and around the Athabasca Basin. This is one that's worthy of talking about because it's got the Wares uranium occurrence, which is uranium right at the unconformity with a swarm of conductors coming down to it. Dead ringer for the hurricane discovery analogy. The reason the hurricane discovery is very important to talk about is because it is the highest grade uranium discovery in the world. It has 20% uranium across its ore body. So it's exciting to have this analogy here, and it's something we're pretty keen to get out and drill shortly. And of course, this is Tower. So we have a habit of hitting uranium when we go out to a new project. Tower is only 10 kilometres from Cigar Lake, and of course, we hit some uranium there on our first drill program, and some uranium pathfinders elements as well. So our market cap, $42 million, cash on hand is about $6.2 million. So we're well funded for our next drill program. Our share price performance has really come back up in the last 3 months, and I'm sure with the tailwinds behind it and the exploration upside potential, you know, it's a really good investment thesis for people out there. Just quickly, our uranium board and management team has a lot of uranium experience. I, of course, was Extract Resource. Steve Blower discovered that Hurricane deposit, which I've spoken about, and many other deposits in the Athabasca. And Sadar comes to us from Denison, where he was there for 17 years, so very experienced. Just on the value, I think we're really undervalued compared to our peers on the TSX. You know, if you just do a quick comparison of early stage discoveries, you can see the potential upside. So in summary, 92 Energy, we're in the investor sweet spot, $42 million market cap, a strong uranium price outlook. I think next year is going to be uranium's year, and everyone's going to get behind the equities. And the GMZ discovery with massive potential upside, fully funded for the next drill program. Thanks very much.
Very interesting. Great note to finish on. Thank you so much, Siobhan. Now, some of you are moving, I can see. So you already have the intel, don't you? Why are you moving? Because you know Wayne Heili isn't here, don't you? Wayne Heili was supposed to address us next, the MD of Peninsula, but those of you who are following the resources will know that Peninsula made a little announcement yesterday, a rather large one, and that has necessitated his attendance back in the US. Originally, they were going to have their annual general meeting yesterday here in Perth, which put him here with us to speak today. Not possible. He was also going to record us a very special presentation. We have not yet received that. So, team, consider this a slightly early lunch. You've got a little bit more time to chat with everyone. Jeff, you can go and have a chat with those people that you want to talk to now. You've got time up your sleeve. I'll ring the bell and we'll be back in for a very big last session. Enjoy, everyone.